Welcome to the Inspiring Yoga Teachers Virtual Summit. And today we have with us Danielle Joseph of Function Creative. Welcome, Danielle, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So Danielle runs a small design studio called Function Creative. She's a brand stylist and a web designer by trade. And she's also a yoga teacher. So she's very well placed to talk to us today about how to create an authentic yoga brand and also an online presence. But before we dig into all of that, Danielle, tell us a little bit about your story with yoga and how it became a part of your life.
Yeah, so it started, I've been doing yoga probably now for almost 10 years. So I started give my age away too, but I started pretty much in university. I started looking in yoga. So it wasn't something done, as a child and my teenhood even. It was more university that it came to me. I think mostly because of just the stress that university can cause. I was kind of looking for some way to de-stress and just ground myself a little bit in a chaotic time, there was coursework and I was trying to hold down 3 jobs at that time and relationships that are crazy and there's lots of things going on. So that sort of became my go-to. I remember my roommate at the time getting me a yoga book, and it was a starter's guide to yoga. I don't even remember when it was right now, but I started to just put a towel down literally in my little student apartment, and I would do some yoga to start. And then I went onto YouTube, found some classes, and I started to really kind of love what was happening. So I started there. I just kind of took classes here, there, wherever I could as I moved around from university jobs, joining some studios when I got settled in the city and that kind of thing. And it just was something I started to explore, I think, on a deeper level. And I was like, okay, there's definitely something happening here with this yoga practice. And I started to I was doing kind of some hot yoga, which I can't even now. I'm just my body. I feel sensitive to hot now, but I was doing a lot more of that. But I was sensing something. I wanted more I just wanted more of it. I wanted to learn more about it. I wanted to learn why I was feeling certain ways when I was doing it. And so I decided to take a teacher training. And it was sort of a decision I made based on a self journey and an education side. And I didn't know that I would ever teach with it. But after I kind of got into it, I was like, okay, I love this. I have to share this. And I did start teaching. So yeah, I came to it, and it was a self-discovery process. And it kind of turned into, okay, I do want to share this with the world. And then it also, because I was already doing brand and web design work, it's sort of naturally gravitated towards a lot of yoga teachers in my community. And then it expanded that people were asking for my support and my help and guidance on those particular things too in the yoga world. So as they're becoming yoga teachers, how do you create a business around that? How do you have a brand? How do you have a website? That kind of thing. So it all sort of meshed together in this nice little bloom of a career.
That's amazing. It's so nice that you were able to kind of bring your passions together and actually help other yoga teachers at the same time. And what do you think then is the biggest challenge that yoga teachers are experiencing right now in 2018?
Yeah, there's a few. I think I definitely in the world that I'm kind of in, where I am working with yogis on more business level. It is around building a business and building a brand and a website. That's the capacity that I'm kind of working with them specifically in. I think finding your voice and finding your business model, I guess, if you want to use those words, it's tough for yoga teachers, because I think yoga, as a yoga instructor, yoga teacher, there's kind of 2 sides of the coin. There's this spirituality side. You have this kind of almost a yoga teachers, I find, and I've worked with, there is sometimes this resistance around building a business model around something that is so sacred to what you're, like I said, I started this as a self-discovery journey. This has almost been my therapy through life. So how do you build a business around something like that? So I think there's this resistance that we sometimes can fight with as yoga teachers. So that's one of the big problems that can come up, or an obstacle that can be in your way in terms of how do you make this thing work as a long-term vision or as a career. And then in my world, we're building kind of businesses and brands and websites and things like that. it becomes a matter of how do I find my voice as a yoga teacher? How do I differentiate myself from other yoga teachers? And how do I really figure out what I want to do? Because there's so many directions you can go. There's so many things you can niche down into or focus on or the people I want to work with. So there's like lots of, I think, obstacles again that can come up that is like, how do I separate myself from like other teachers, and how do I figure out what my thing is in yoga?
Yeah, sure. That actually leads me on quite nicely, because as more and more yoga teachers are going through their training, many teachers are also struggling with that kind of concept of standing out. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think when it comes to standing out so in the branding kind of world that I'm into, when we say like standing out, we want to stand out amongst other businesses that are doing similar things. But for yoga teachers specifically, and because yoga teachers are so personally tied to their brand and their business because it's them, I think standing out becomes a matter of like figuring out figuring your voices as a business and finding the right people to work with based on that voice. So I think sometimes when we want to stand out amongst, I don't really love saying like competition, because like I really do believe in there's enough to go around, and that collaborating with other people is actually probably a better, stronger way to do it than competing against each other. But staying out as a yoga teacher really can come down to just figuring out exactly what you love doing and what you love about yoga, and finding people that resonate and vibe with that. Because it doesn't have to mean that you niche down to just pre or postnatal yoga, or that you're just going to focus on breath work, or that you're just going to focus on retreats, or it doesn't mean you have to kind of like brand yourself. I think it's a matter of just matching a brand and a business and say like a website, or like all of these bits and pieces of a business to what you're already doing, what you are doing, and who you are. And then when you're doing that, that's more true to who you are anyways. And you're not trying to be a brand. You're not trying to brand yourself as something else. Then people are going to resonate with you so much more organically. And it takes time, it takes patience, but I think that's where people stand out is just figuring out and doing like the personal work to figure out what you're already doing, what that means as a brand.
So finding that clarity around what you have to offer and your
definitely.
And for somebody who really doesn't know anything about branding, what's your kind of definition? How would you explain branding to a yoga teacher who has no experience in creating a brand?
Yeah, it's such an intangible thing, and it's always like I feel like 50% of my job is just trying to bring the intangible into the tangible worlds, because a brand really is about the feelings and the experience that you're giving to other people who are working with you or interacting with you or basically come across you in any way, because there's so many different points of interaction and experience now that people are having, whether it's coming to one of your classes or seeing some random person that shared some of yours on Facebook, or like there's just so many touch points that can get lost along the way. And a brand is just really about the feelings and experience that any one person having with an interaction with you at any point. So it is a pretty vague, vast definition. But what we do when we try and get clarity around branding, or we try and bring that intangible into the table, is that we're trying to make sure that we have a little bit more control over what those experiences are and what those feelings are that people are having. And we're more aware of what people are experiencing when they're interacting with us, so that we can know who we want to work with. We can know what they're saying, or what I know, the Amazon CEO, Jeff Bezos, he says a brand is what people think about you when you're in a room. So it's nice to be aware of what people are saying about you and being able to have a little bit more control over that, and being more in the driver's seat of how people are going to share their experiences with you, their feelings about you. So yeah, I would say that's kind of the best definition that I can give, was just, it really is the experience that people are having while interacting with you.
So practically then, would you recommend that teachers speak to their kind of regular students and maybe try to kind of get that feedback from them as to what the perception is from the students' point of view?
Yeah, I think there's so many clarity, I think, exercises that that you can start to even do on your own beyond beyond working with like a brand strategist or a brand coach, who those are the kinds of people that really help people get that clarity and start to figure that out. But even beyond that, like, yeah, talking to students in your class, or, surveying, if you have an audience of people or even just a group of students that have been kind of loyally coming to your classes, and you don't mind asking for their email address, and then putting a quick survey together and just asking some questions, like what their experience has been with you, or what words would they use to describe your classes, or what words would they use to describe your teaching style. Like starting to dig deep into those questions with the people who are already in front of you is invaluable to getting some feedback on that, because, often we're trying to figure out what everyone else wants. But if you have even a handful of 3 people that come to your classes very often, or, are always wanting to come to your workshops or anything like that, just email them, or even reach out and have a 20-minute call with them, or, buy them coffee and take them and kind of pick their brain about those kinds of questions. I think that really helps get us some kind of clarity or start to this brand strategy.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I like that. One of the things that comes up actually quite often in my community is this whole idea around choosing between a business brand name and a personal yoga brand name, which could be your own name. How might you go about deciding which is the right option for you?
Yeah, that's a really common question, especially in this kind of industry where, like I said, when people are booking a class or they want to do a workshop, you're the person showing up. You're the face of your business. It's a very personal business model. It's a business model. So when people are deciding between those two things, particularly in the yoga world, generally, like, my best advice is there's a couple of reasons to go with just a name, and then there's a couple of reasons to go with a business name. So when you're the face showing up, I find that when you have a business that is your name and your business brand is you, that provides a really solid element of connection with your audience, or the people, your students that are going to be listening to you. Because they have a face and they have a name, and that makes it a lot easier to understand and to connect and to then want to follow up with and learn from and things like that. So a business name being your own name is probably the majority of what yoga teachers should be leaning towards. But there are many reasons to have a business name. So even, in my world where I have a design studio called Function Creative Co. I could have had, Danielle Joseph designs or something like that and kept it very personal to me. But because I had a bit of a term vision for my business, even when I started, even though it was just me when I started, I had a vision because I worked through all of that clarity and kind of that strategy stuff up front. I had a bit of a long-term vision that I did want a bit of separation from me and my business, because I want the ability to have collaborators and possibly, business managers and other designers and developers on this as well. So it's not just showing up to my business all the time. So I feel like for yoga teachers, particularly if you think you're going to have a yoga studio, you want like a physical space with other people going up, or you're going to create some kind of business model where you're offering private yoga, but you're going to have a couple other instructors with you. Those are the instances where having a business name where you have a bit of a wall of separation is probably the right way to go. But if you are your brand and you are your business and you're showing up, then I really think even to start, having your business name be your name is just such an easy reference. It's such an easy point of connection, and it kind of removes the barrier of like human connection for people.
Sure, that's really clear. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Do you have then any kind of practical tips, or maybe outline the steps that a teacher would need to take to create the more tangible parts of a yoga brand? So things like your colors, your fonts, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So generally I have a brand checklist too. I should have opened that to like really review it. But anytime that someone's going to start tackle building the tangible of their brand, it does make a lot of sense to first start with that strategy, start with that clarity, because that's really the foundation that fuels the rest of it. So starting with those surveys, or even if you are going to take the full leap and start with some actual resources or tools or a coach or a strategist or something like that, that is generally the first step anyways, because you've got to get that mumbo jumbo that's happening up here. You've got to get that down and summarized and really kind of hashed out before you can start to kind of translate that into visual and tangible things, at least if you want it to be a little bit more timeless. If you're kind of just trying to put something out there, of course you can just put something out there. The chances though that you're going to have to come back to that and revise and look at it and really kind of, you'll probably get to a point very soon after you put it out there that you'll want to go back to you'll want to go back and start to find the intention. But when you're starting there, and then you can start to build out. So generally the process would be, discovering your business name, what you want to call yourself as a business, referred to. People are referring to you or about you or talking to people about your services or something like that. They have something to share, so a name. And then from there, getting something, even like a really simple logo. Like generally with yoga teachers that I've been working with in my Facebook group or that are just starting, and I'm fully aware of budgets and things like that. And certain, like it's very hard for someone coming out of a teacher training who's just trying to kind of make it in this world, because it is a hard, you have to have lots of students and you've got to have a certain business model to be able to really finance your career. So I understand budgets, and I understand there's not always thousands of dollars to spend on your brand design. So even if you're coming out of the gate with a really simple word mark, like a really just clean, simple font that you're going to use as your name, you're going to use that consistently. That's key, is just to have something consistent. Pick out, 3 to 5 colors that you want to use consistently, and like not overwhelming the, when I say like 5, even having a couple of neutrals in there, like you pick things and fonts that you can use consistently so that you're not confusing people necessarily. So it doesn't have to be super fancy from the beginning. It just has to be consistent. So colors, fonts, image style. It's sometimes fun to just go on Pinterest or on something like a free stock photo website and just find some images that all sort of look consistent and cohesive, and see what that image style might be, so that when you're posting on social media or you're building a website, it looks like it can be a cohesive kind of flow. So starting with it's very easy to start with the basics. And I think it's easy to start with the basics and build on that as long as you're being consistent.
Sure. Okay. So you mentioned Pinterest. Do you have any other tools that you recommend that teachers could use to go about creating their brand?
So Pinterest is a great place to start for like creating a vision board. Even with my clients, I never require a Pinterest vision board, but if they are more visual people and that's something that helps their own process of clarity, then I always recommend for sure go on and just start pinning what resonates. And then when you have a Pinterest board kind of created and you've got multiple pins that you've pinned, you can kind of step back and scroll through it pretty quickly and see some of the underlying repetition of patterns or colors or textures or fonts or styles. So you can see an overall theme. And then from there, Canva is a really great tool for people just starting out who want to DIY. And that's canva.com. It's like canvas without the S. And that's basically a free platform. You can get the paid option, which is actually not very expensive and pretty worth it if you ask me. I usually get my clients to use the paid version because you can upload custom fonts. You can create a brand kit with your own colors. There's lots of customizable features, but it allows you to create templates and graphics, and you can create a pretty simple logo in Canva if you needed to. There's another platform that now I can't even remember the name of, but it's a vector-based free platform. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's like Canva, but it's much better for creating logos if you're just creating like a simple word mark. But you can use Canva if you basically create a logo in Canva, you can use it as well with just a font. But they have really great templates. So that's where I definitely direct people who are looking for more of a simple start and like a DIY approach. It's a really great free option. And then, like I said, even the paid option is much better.
Perfect. Okay. So I've created some of the sort of elements of my yoga brand, and I've created a simple text-based logo. What do I do with it now? Where do I share it?
Yeah, so I think what's important when you create the brand assets is to start using them consistently in the different ways that you're going to be sharing things or promoting yourself or talking to people. So a few of the ways, so we've got kind of all of this system set up. You've got kind of like what we would call like a brand style sheet ready to go. You've got everything outlined. Then it's time to start applying. So as a yoga teacher, that might mean putting together posters in your studio, or if you teach classes regularly at a studio, maybe printing out, like using your new brand to print out and make some postcards and send them for like upcoming workshops or at a retreat coming up. Leave them at the front of your class and just let people know, you know, they're here and you're teaching a workshop on next weekend or something like that. So using that brand to put those pieces in place, that's where that consistent experience starts to be able to be tied together. So do I think that people are going to be failing at business if they have a postcard that doesn't match their website? Not necessarily, but do I think that that student who sees this like effort that you've put into this postcard and then visits your website to sign up for the retreat and it's all cohesive and it's very clearly you and it's easy to distinguish that takes a lot of the brain power out of their day. And anytime we can make someone's life a little bit easier or simpler to digest, I definitely recommend, because everyone's very busy. I'm sure everyone's very busy running around like chickens with their head cut off. But if we can make that easier for them and the step from learning to booking easier, then it's just going to be that much better for your business model and for that brand experience. So putting that into play on social media, graphics that you share, if you're sharing quotes or testimonials, keeping your colors the same consistently and keeping your fonts the same consistently, your logo, that kind of stuff really, really goes a long way in terms of brand experience.
Perfect. I love that. So let's talk about websites. What advice can you give to teachers who have a website that just doesn't seem to be getting any traffic?
Yeah, so that's a big thing. So even with clients, like, you know, it's, you can make it, but that doesn't mean that they'll come. So we can't just kind of put up and expect that that's it. That's not where the work ends, unfortunately. I wish it was that simple. But if you've kind of put the effort into making a website, or you've had one made for you, or whatever the case may be, there's a few ways that you can start to build momentum and get some more traffic to those sites. And it really depends on your intention and the strategy behind what, like if you want, who you want to be visiting that site. Sorry. So if you're a yoga teacher who teaches locally, has workshops locally, you teach in a studio, or you own a studio, or you do in-person private classes, that strategy behind getting traffic to your website is going to be different than someone who has maybe online classes and does international retreats, and someone who's attracting people from all over the world versus kind of like a local community, because those are two different intentions. And I think sometimes we forget, because as yoga teachers, as people who have businesses, I think even like blogging becomes this thing where it's like, well, I have to write a blog. And that's a lot of work to take on. I tell people all the time, like blogs are no joke. Yeah. Blogs are not a joke. They take a lot of effort. You've got to write the post. You've got to do the graphics. You've got to share the posts. You've got to keep it maintained. If you don't want to be posting regularly, you should remove the dates from your website blog, because people don't want to land on your website and see that you haven't touched it since 2015. Yeah. Not because that information might not be relevant. That might be really great information still on that post that you shared, but people are going to be deterred because for some reason, we have this mental block. You haven't touched it in 3 years. So there's a few strategies for stuff like that. Like if you are a local teacher and you focus and you make most of your living based off of local community and the community you've built around you, then blogging is not that crucial to getting traffic to your website. And it might be a great way for you to share with your students and be able to a platform to use to share it, to add value to your students' kind of experience with you. But if you're using it as a tool to get traffic to your website, it's not super relevant unless it's really specific to the location you're trying to get traffic. So blogging can help with getting people to your website. It gets people to keep returning to your website, that kind of thing. But being strategic about it is going to save you a lot of headache in the long run, and trying to maintain things and that kind of stuff. But the other thing too that you need to do to continue to build that momentum is you've got to share. You've got to have a voice behind what you're doing and your message. So behind every brand is a brand story. You've got a message to share. I'm sure everyone does. Even if you haven't pinpointed an exact message, you have certain values and certain things that make you and make you a unique teacher because of the story that you bring to the table. So you've got to share that voice. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to show up, or else people aren't just going to come to you. Unfortunately, like I said, be great, but you do have to show up and consistently be putting in the effort to voice those messages and to voice that story and share content, social media, even, you know, if there's ways you can collaborate with other teachers who have other audiences that are similar to yours, if there's like collaborations you can have, if there's ways you can show up to studios or have studios feature you, or you've got to show up, you've got to do the work, or else they don't just fall at your feet, unfortunately.
Brilliant. I love that. So many of the websites that I see, you land on the homepage and there you will find some information about the teacher, who they are, why they're qualified to teach yoga. What advice can you give for making your website more about your student and their journey, so that the student really connects with what they see when they land on the website and they want to stay on the site to learn more?
Yeah, so I think that's a big common, I don't want to say mistake, but it's a common thing that people think that that their websites are about them, and they are, because like I said, it is about the brand experience and it is completely about your brand story and what you bring to the table. But people are busy in their own heads most of the time, and they are focused on what they need, and they're probably seeking you out or seeking yoga teachers or yoga out because of their own motive, their own things, their own reasons that they want to be learning and they want to be exploring yoga. So I think it's really important when people land on a website specifically for yoga teachers to that personal connection. Like, humans want to connect and learn from humans. I really do believe that. And that's why when you are the person showing up to your business every day and you're the person providing the class and teaching, it is nice to have a business name that is your name, because that's already that point of connection for them. They already feel a little bit more invested because they know your name, they know your face. So it is important when people land on a website to understand who you are and who is speaking to them from this homepage, from this website. But the language that you use and how you communicate to people who are coming across your site, it should be done so. Everything should sort of be created in your brand and your website and done from a lens of your perfect client or your perfect student or your perfect customer, because that's like, it's almost like you should write your site for, like, if you have you're not supposed to have favorites, but if you have a student or someone that you know has come to your classes I wish I could work with them and people like them all the time, then write and communicate and design and create for that one person. And that's kind of what it should all cycle back to. So it is important on like your about page or on your homepage to say who you are or show who you are, but to just focus on who you are and what you do and why you're doing it, pictures of you in different back bend poses, and to only focus on that is kind of doing a disservice to the people who want to learn from you, because they want to know how you can help them. And it's wonderful that you are this person, and I'm really going to value that because I'm coming to you as your brand story. But how can I benefit from that? Because I can't do that back bend, and I can't go to, learn yoga and do a teacher training and wherever. So yeah, really catering, any content should be catered towards what that student is looking for and what they need help with and what maybe what they're struggling with.
Yeah, that's really valuable advice. Okay, so email marketing or social media?
Go. Do we have? We'll go for another 2 hours. And no, I'm just kidding. No, so I think both are important for their own purpose. If I was literally going to put my attention into only one or the other, I would say email marketing. And the reason is because that is what you have control over. We all know, I'm sure, that social media is changing all the time. And I don't know, I wasn't very surprised by the recent news of Facebook having all of this information on us. I wasn't shocked by that because I kind of assumed that. But they do, and they have full control over any content that you put on there. So they have algorithms in place to show your content to certain people and hide it from others. And they have, like, it's not meant to be an evil source of content, but it is controlled by someone or some entity that has other motives than yours. So you want to share great content. You want people to see your content and learn from you and get messages that you're putting out and maybe inspire people and share what you offer and things like that. That's not Facebook's motive. That's not Instagram's motive. Their motive is really to generate a profit from advertising and to have multiple people signing up for their accounts. They have other motives than yours. So it's not always the best platform to get your message out. It is super helpful in getting reach in terms of expanding your voice into realms and areas that maybe you wouldn't have had like many years ago. It's very powerful for that. And I've even experienced the power of social media for connecting people. And I've met wonderful people and built friendships off of Instagram, people all over the world, where if I go visit another country, I know someone there that I could meet up with for coffee. That's incredible. But in terms of like actually expanding your message and getting your message out into the world and your services out into the world, it's not always the best. It can help and support that, and it can help support your email list. Yeah. But I think in terms of control, like when you are asking someone to let you into their inbox and they're exchanging they're giving you that information, that's a privilege, and that's something that is very intimate and it's important, and we're all bombarded. And so the fact that they're allowing you into them, that means they're really invested in you. They're invested in what you have to say, and they want to be there showing up for you. That is, one email address is so much more powerful than hundreds of followers on any social media platform, just because of that exchange. So that's why I think that's most important. And the moment you can start building that community online via an email list, and you don't have to commit to sending out newsletters every week. You don't have to commit to anything right from the get-go, but to have a community of people who are invested in you enough to say, yeah, here's my email address, that is so much more powerful. And those are the people that you want to be having in your tribe versus thousands of social media followers. Even if your email list is 5 people, because everyone starts somewhere, and it doesn't have to be hundreds or thousands of people. You can have a community that is very effective and helps you to be able to share your services with, even if it's just 5 people. I would way prefer that over metrics of social media.
Yeah. And what role then does your website play in email marketing?
I think that's really where you can start to captivate and engage people. And these days, as we do move through social media and we do get lots more email in our inboxes than we did back in the day, it becomes more and more of a privilege to get those email addresses. So don't be discouraged if you've got email signups on your on your website and it's not collecting hundreds of people a day. Like, that's not its purpose. That's not its intent. So definitely having your email signups throughout your website and on the pages where it can lead people in. So for example, on your homepage, like pop-ups and welcome mats, like those can be effective in certain circumstances, but with something so personal as yoga, generally people want to understand a little bit more about who you are and what you do and why they want to hear from you specifically before they exchange that information. So even having like a sign up even in your footer, or maybe you have your about page and then just halfway through your page, you've got a sign up that's like, okay, they've learned a little bit more about me at this point, and that's a little bit more invested. If you have blog posts and you do go that route, having it on there. And if you are going to go kind of the direction of giving something in exchange for an email address. So I know there's lots of really effective ways to do that. Maybe you offer a brief meditation recording in exchange. So sign up for the email list and you'll be sent a recording for a meditation or a PDF guide of a yoga practice. Or if you're going to exchange something, the only thing I say is be really strategic about the kind of people. Like at that point, I think you need to have a lot of clarity and foundation built into your brand and know exactly who you want to be working with and know who you are as a teacher and what your voice is. If you have that kind of clarity, then it becomes a lot easier to be strategic about what you want to give away, because there is a lot of strategy, I think, that goes into that. So I'm actually even just a big fan of just an email newsletter sign up. If you're just getting started and you're sort of figuring all this out, just have a sign up on there, and the people who are interested will sign up, and the people who aren't, that's fine. That's it. And same with social media. Have your social media profiles guide back to your email list. Like always use that as like a funnel almost to get people sifted into your list.
Yeah, it's a really important point actually, to use your freebies and your kind of opt-ins to attract the right people. So you do need to have that clarity first. You need to know who it is that you're trying to attract before you create something like that. Okay, that's really great. Thank you. So what do you think are the 3 key things that teachers should do every day to grow their business?
3 things. Okay, so I would say even if you have just like 10 minutes a day to work, how do you say this? To work on your business instead of in it. So the difference between in or on is working in your business means showing up and teaching classes and teaching yoga. Working on your business means setting up your website, setting up an email list, marketing efforts. That's all the working on your business. So that's my first piece of advice for any yoga teacher. Even if it's 10 minutes, set 10 minutes aside each day to work on your business. Yeah. Because it's the first thing usually you can push to the back burner, but it is important. It's important to, if you want growth and you want expansion and you want to reach more, you want your message to reach more people, you've got to put the effort in and show up. Back to the website traffic, you've got to show up and do the work. So 10 minutes minimum to work on your business. If you can't structure your week around 10 minutes a day, I actually have brought this into my business and it's worked wonders, is that on Mondays in the morning, every Monday morning, from basically when I sit down to work until about lunchtime when I take a break, that is like my boss day. That whole morning is dedicated to working on my business. That for me might mean writing a blog post, that kind of figure out a schedule that just put time aside to work on your business. So that's my one piece of advice. So we're going with every day. The second thing for me would be to show up and share. So if that means, it doesn't have to mean showing up on social media. I don't want that to be misunderstood. It doesn't have to mean that you have to post every day on social media. When I say show up and share, like share your voice, share your message, that might mean adding a little bit of something of you or your brand or your message in your class at the beginning of your class. Or it might mean at the end of it. Maybe that one thing that you do every day at the end of your class is that you don't love selling things, but you've got a workshop coming up or retreat, you can really subtly say, at the end of a class or something, or at the beginning of a class, just so you know, if you enjoyed the class or if you enjoyed this kind of class, I have a workshop coming up and I'm going to leave these at the front if anyone's interested. There are ways to do that. And if you're that kind of person who doesn't like showing up and selling in a pushy way, because I'm not one of those people, the people who are going to be attracted to that are the people you're going to be that you want to work with. So don't be hard on yourself for that. So just show up, share your message in some way every day. And maybe it is on social media. It could be. So that's number 2. And then number 3 for me is just do one thing a day that can educate you, that can expand something. So don't overwhelm yourself with content consumption, because content is everywhere and you can do so many things. But if you can do one thing a day to either ground yourself or learn or expand on something, even again, if it's like 5 minutes, that's so valuable. So for me, sometimes in a day that looks like listening to a really great podcast episode while I'm working, or sometimes it means sitting and reading a book, even if it's not a personal growth book, it's just reading, or it might mean journaling or writing or doing some mindset work, so take some time for yourself every day, even if it is 5 minutes at the beginning or at the end of the day, to do something that can help you ground and expand and just kind of touch base with yourself.
That's really great. Thank you so much, Danielle.
You're welcome.
Then, tell us if you have any resources for yoga teachers specifically. Tell us about those and how we can find you and connect with you online.
Yeah, definitely. So I do have a yoga teacher Facebook group online that is called Build Your Brand, a yoga teachers community. And so there's about 2,000 of us in there that people show up, and it's just really a place to connect and bounce ideas off of each other. And if you've got questions, it's a great place to leave them in there and have the community support you. My actual business is over at hellofunction.com. So that's all of my brand resources, website resources. The blog is pretty, diverse with different kind of learning things that if you are a DIYer or you need help getting started, there's lots of great things there. And then the main thing, like I've kind of driven the point home already about the clarity and the focus and getting that foundation stuff up, is that I do have a brand planner, which is, I've kind of created it as like a way it's accessible to people. So it's not like you have to go out and hire a coach really or a strategist. you could use this as a really supplementary tool to start to get that clarity. So it's an actual book. I have a hardcover version and a digital version, and it is full of really solid exercises and guides to work you through all of that stuff that I talked about in a really clear, focused way. So then you can start to do all the rest of it.
Amazing. And is that on your website?
It's on my website, so you can access it through hellofunction.com, or you can go directly to thebrandplanner.co.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. Well, I'll link to all of those resources underneath the interview as well. So thank you so much for your time today. It's been really, really valuable information that you shared with us. And I'm sure all of the yoga teachers that watch it are going to get so much from it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really love chatting with yoga teachers because I'm so in the world. So I'm grateful to be here.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Danielle.